For 60 years now, Kenya has been stuck in this relentless cycle. You see a massive corruption scandal hit the headlines, and then you see a complete and total lack of accountability for the powerful people involved. It's a pattern that has defined presidencies and honestly has just worn down public trust. So to really get how this became the norm, we've got to go back and look at how this whole cycle got started, and maybe more importantly, why it just keeps on spinning.
Okay, to see just how deep this culture of impunity really goes, let's start with something recent and, frankly, pretty unbelievable. There's a former CEO of Kenya's Electoral Commission, a man named James Oswago. He was actually convicted for his part in the Chicken Gate scandal, basically a bribery scheme for printing election materials back in 2013. And yet, he was recently shortlisted to get his old job back.
That just raises the most obvious question, right? How is that even possible? How can a system exist where that's a thing that can happen? To find the answer, we have to go back, way back, to the very beginning.
So our journey starts right after independence, under Kenya's very first president, Jomo Kenyatta. This is where the blueprint for high-level corruption, and, this is the important part, high-level impunity was first drawn up.
And it really didn't take long for that pattern to show up. Just 2 years. 2 years after independence, the new nation was hit with its first major scandal, and it set a precedent that would just echo for decades to come.
So this was it, Kenya's first big one. The guy in charge of the country's maize supply, Minister Paul Nigi, used his position to help his wife's company, right in the middle of a famine. He literally stole thousands of bags of maize meant for famine relief. It was such a blatant abuse of power, directly hurting the very people he was supposed to be helping.
But what happened next? That's what really sealed the deal. A commission looked into it, but Njoy, who was a close ally of the president, faced zero consequences. They found he had no case to answer, and he just kept his job in government. The message was sent, loud and clear. If you're powerful, if you're connected, you're above the law. The pattern was officially set. And that pattern of impunity? Well, under the next president, Daniel Arap Moi, it didn't just continue. It escalated into something else entirely. The sheer scale of corruption in this era was just mind-boggling. It went beyond individuals getting rich and became what we call state capture, where the entire system of government is basically hijacked for looting.
To give you an idea of the scale we're talking about, just one scandal, the Goldenberg scandal, is estimated to have cost Kenya more than 10% of its entire GDP at the time. Just think about that. An amount of money so huge, it basically crippled the national economy.
This whole affair was so massive, so destructive, that it took a huge judicial commission years just to try and figure out the tangled mess of theft. So how did it work? At its heart, the scheme was a gigantic fraud. The government was paying massive subsidies to a company, Goldenberg International, for exporting gold and diamonds that didn't actually exist. But what made it so devastating was that the approval came from the very, very top. President Moi himself personally authorized a payment of 5.8 billion shillings. And you can just feel the sheer frustration from the people trying to investigate it. This quote from the chairman of the inquiry says it all. The money trail was so hopelessly tangled that he basically said, look, we have to just focus on the first guys who got the money, otherwise we'll be stuck here for years.
In the final outcome? Well, it was just tragically familiar. The whistleblower, a man named David Munyeke, who worked at the central bank, got fired for exposing the whole thing. He died without a job. And in the meantime, despite all the evidence, not one single senior official ever went to prison.
So we move into the 21st century. Kenya gets a new constitution. New anti-corruption agencies are set up. It was supposed to be an era of reform. But, as you'll see, while the names of the scandals changed, the underlying pattern of impunity stayed exactly the same. From Anglo leasing to the NYS heists, the mysterious Eurobond, the Kemsa scandal during the COVID-19 pandemic. The list just goes on and on. Every single administration has had its own signature multi-billion shilling scandals, continuing this unbroken chain right up to today.
Let's just zoom in on one modern example, the Error and Kimwara dams. The government paid out almost 20 billion shillings. This was supposed to be for 2 giant dams that would provide electricity and water for irrigation.
So what did Kenyans get for all that money? Absolutely nothing. Not a single stone was laid. The dams were never built. They became known as the ghost projects, a perfect, tragic symbol of modern corruption.
The director of public prosecutions didn't mince words. He called it a crime that, quote, enslaves us with unnecessary debt and mortgages our future generations. He was saying this isn't just theft, this is stealing from the country's future. And yet the result was exactly the same. Now, for a moment it looked different. In a huge move, the sitting finance minister was actually arrested. But in the end, all charges against him and the other senior officials dropped. The cycle continued, unbroken.
So, okay, this brings us right back to that fundamental question. Why? Why does this keep happening? Why does accountability fail time and time again?
Well, the thing is, the reasons are systemic. They're baked into the system itself. You've got political interference, where a case can just vanish. The schemes are designed to be crazy complex, with offshore accounts and shell companies that make it a nightmare to trace the money. You've got brave whistleblowers who come forward and end up getting punished, not protected. And maybe worst of all, you see the very same officials implicated in these scandals getting reappointed to powerful jobs later on. It just reinforces that message. There are no real consequences.
But you know, the impact of this six-decade failure isn't just about the lost billions. It's so easy to get fixated on the numbers. But there's a much deeper, more corrosive cost to the nation.
I mean, this chart really says it all. When you look at what actually happens to these big, high-profile corruption cases, the picture is just bleak. A tiny, tiny fraction ever end in a conviction. The vast majority, the accused are acquitted, the charges are dropped, or the cases just get stuck in the court system forever, which is pretty much the same as no justice at all. So, at the end of the day, the real cost isn't the money. It's the catastrophic loss of faith. When people see this happen over and over and over again, they stop trusting their government, they stop trusting the courts, the police, they even stop trusting the whole idea of elections. And that is a devastating price to pay. This whole history just leaves us with a really profound and difficult question for the future. After watching this exact same pattern repeat itself across 6 presidents and 60 years, what on earth is it going to take for Kenya to finally break this devastating cycle of corruption and impunity?